At just 20 years old, my life took an unexpected turn when I found out I was pregnant. With dreams of a bright future ahead, I never imagined my father would kick me out for the news. Feeling lost and abandoned, I faced the world alone. Years passed, and the truth behind my father's reaction remained a mystery until a shocking revelation changed everything, surprising not just me, but everyone involved. What really happened that fateful day? The answer would reshape our lives forever. I spent my childhood in our house. It felt like being in a military camp. My father, Robert, was a college professor. Everything was run with strict discipline. My older sister, Grace, was an ideal child. She followed the rules. She concentrated on her studies and always wanted to make everyone happy. I was the complete opposite, always pushing the boundaries. Mia, sit up straight, my father would snap during dinner. A lady does not slouch. I'd roll my eyes, sit up briefly, and then slouch again. The second time, he didn't look. There was a constant power struggle between us. My mother, Karen, didn't sing much, but was equally strict in her own way. She would give me disapproving looks about my outfits or the friends I chose. What will their neighbors think? She would always ask, but it appeared that she was more concerned with appearances than anything else. Despite the oppressive atmosphere at home, I discovered small ways to create my own space. When I was 17, I began secretly dating Adam, who was 20 and attending college. My parents would not approve of this type of person. For a while, I thought things were finally going my way. I had planned to attend college and escape my parents' grip, but life had other plans for me. A few months after my 19th birthday, I started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, I assumed it was stress from my upcoming exams. However, the symptoms became too frequent to ignore. I recall standing in a small gas station bathroom with shaky hands, staring at a pregnancy test. One pink line appeared, indicating that I was pregnant. The following few days were a blur. I could not stop thinking about what to do. I knew I needed to tell Adam, but every time I attempted to call him, I lost my nerve. Finally, I couldn't keep avoiding it. We met at our usual location, a small park away from everyone's eyes. Adam smiled when he saw me, but it quickly faded as he noticed the serious expression on my face. "Mia? What is wrong?" he asked, reaching for my hand. I pulled away and hugged myself. "I am pregnant," I blurted out. The silence that followed was heavy, and the face went through a series of emotions, including shock, disbelief, and fear. "Are you certain?" he asked. I nodded. Tears well up in my eyes. I took 6 tests. They were all positive. Adam rubbed his hands through his hair, his eyes suddenly cold. "You have to get rid of it, Mia. Abortion is the only option. We are too young for this. It will ruin our lives." I couldn't believe what I heard. The boy I thought I'd love was telling me to get rid of our baby as if it meant nothing. "Get out of my sight," I hissed, turning away from him. He left without saying anything else, leaving me alone to make the most difficult decision of my life. Telling my parents was even harder. I waited until after dinner, when my father was sitting in the living room reading the newspaper, and my mother was knitting. Grace stood nearby. "However, the bystander, I have something to tell you." I spoke, my voice shaking. My father lowered the newspaper and stared at me suspiciously. "What is it, Maya?" I took a deep breath. "I am pregnant." The reaction was worse than I had expected. My father's face turned a bright red as he yelled about shame and disappointment. My mother burst into tears, concerned about what her neighbors would think. Grace stood there in shock and disgust. "You will have an abortion." My father finally spoke, his voice cold. "We will find a discreet clinic. Nobody should be aware of this error." At first, I resisted, but the pressure from my family became unbearable. A few days later, I was sitting in a doctor's office. My mother and Grace sat beside me like guards. The doctor, a pleasant 50-year-old woman, reviewed my records before turning to face me. Her eyes widened with concern. "Mia," she explained gently, "because of your medical history, if you have an abortion, you will most likely be unable to have children again." Her words struck me like a freight train. Never be able to bear children again. Suddenly, the choice was clear. "No," I replied, my voice stronger than expected. "I am keeping the baby." My mother gasped, and Grace rolled her eyes, but I held my ground. The drive home was tense and silent. When we walked through the door, my father was expecting news. "So?" he demanded. She would not do it. My mother spat in frustration. My father's face twisted with rage. He drew a deep breath before speaking. His voice was cold and final. "Get out. Pack your belongings and leave. You're not my daughter. I will not let you embarrass this family with your condition." My mother nodded in agreement. Her eyes hardened. "You heard your father leave." Grace simply stood there, silent and judgmental. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I dashed to my room, grabbed some clothes, and tossed them into a bag before heading for the door. My father's voice stopped me for the last time. "And don't think about returning. We are concerned. You are no longer alive for us." The door slammed behind me, leaving me with a sense of finality and despair. I was single, pregnant, and homeless. In desperation, I called the only person I thought could help my Aunt Sarah. She and Uncle Mike had always been the family outcasts, living in another state and rarely speaking with my parents. Mia. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" On. Sarah's voice was both warm and concerned. Through my tears, I explained everything. There was a lengthy pause after I finished. "Where are you currently?" she finally asked. "Outside our home. They kicked me out." Another pause. "Stay right there. We're coming to get you." The drive to Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike's house was long, but it gave me time to reflect. Their house was small, but cozy. As soon as we arrived, Sarah fussed over me, making sure I ate something, while Uncle Mike carried my bag to the spare room, which was now mine. He put the bag down and said, "It's not much, but it's yours for as long as you need it." I looked around the small, warm room and felt a lump in my throat. I whispered, "It is perfect." The next few weeks were spent attending doctor appointments and adjusting to my new life. Sarah spoke up one evening over dinner. "We've been thinking," she explained. "We wanted to help you further your education." I looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" Uncle Mike leaned forwards. "We have saved some money over the years. We never had children of our own, so we want to use it to help you attend college." I was speechless. After everything that had occurred, the concept of college seemed impossible. I'm not sure what to say. "Say yes to this." Sarah smiled. "We believe in you, Nia. This baby does not represent the end of your dreams." With their help, I enrolled in a community college and majored in business management. Juggling classes, doctor's appointments, and pregnancy was difficult, but I remained determined. I had also gotten a job as a waitress at a local restaurant. Evelyn, the owner, was pleasant and accommodating regarding my working hours. It wasn't much, but it allowed me to save for the baby and help Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike with their household expenses. My son's birth was simultaneously terrifying and beautiful. After hours of labor, I held him in my arms, amazed at his tiny fingers and toes, while Sarah and Uncle Mike stood nearby, smiling like proud grandparents. "What name are you going to give him?" Sarah asked softly. "Lucas," I mentioned. "It means bringer of light, as you brought light into my life." As I adjusted to being a mother, juggling a newborn, college classes, and work, I frequently thought of my parents and Grace. Did they know about Lucas? Do they regret what they did? But I pushed those thoughts away. I had a new family who accepted and loved me unconditionally. One day, during a rare break, I was scrolling through social media when I came across a post that caught my eye. It was from Grace. "I'm excited to announce that Adam, ironically, has aged. Can't wait to begin our lives together." The photograph showed Grace smiling with her arm around Adam, the same Adam who had abandoned me and our child. They appeared content as if nothing had happened. A rush of emotions overtook me. Anger, hurt, betrayal. But then I noticed Lucas playing in his crib and realized something important. I did not need their approval or love. Everything I needed was here. The years went by in a blur of diapers, textbooks, and late-night studying. My final semester was tough. I was taking extra classes so that I could graduate on time, still working at the restaurant and caring for an active 5-year-old. Graduation day was filled with emotion as I waited in line to receive my diploma. When I looked into the crowd, Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike were beaming with pride. Lucas sat on Uncle Mike's shoulders, waving enthusiastically whenever he caught my attention. Dot. The real surprise came later, at the graduation party Sarah and Uncle Mike hosted for me. While we were celebrating, Evelyn, my restaurant boss, pulled me aside. "Mia, I've got an offer for you," she replied with a smile. "I'm looking for a new restaurant manager and believe you'd be ideal for the position." I was shocked, me, but I've only been a waitress. Evelyn waved her hand dismissively. "You have been so much more than that. I've seen how you handle difficult customers, organize your team, and balance work, school, and motherhood. That's the level of dedication I require in a manager." It felt like a dream had come true, a steady job with higher pay and consistent hours. It was just what Lucas and I needed to begin our new lives. The following few years were full of positive developments. I immersed myself in my new role at the restaurant, learning everything I could about management and business. Lucas began school and developed into a bright, inquisitive boy who enjoyed reading and playing baseball. Chris and I met at a Lucas Little League game. He was there with his son Dylan, who was playing for the opposing team. We began talking, and I was immediately drawn to his warm eyes and easy laugh. "Single father?" I inquired, noting he was alone. He nodded with a sad smile on his face. "Widower? Dylan's mother died when he was a baby. My heart aches for him. I quote, "I'm very sorry. That must be hard." "Yes," he admitted. "However, we manage." "How about you, single mother?" I laughed. "Isn't this obvious? Our relationship progresses slowly. We were both careful. We didn't rush things because we'd been hurt before, and our children were in the picture." However, as the months passed, I found myself falling for Chris. He was gentle and patient, and Lucas adored him. Chris proposed 1 year after we first met. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a peaceful moment in his backyard with our boys playing nearby. Our wedding was small and intimate, featuring only close friends and family. As I walked down the aisle, Lucas proudly by my side as ring bearer, I caught Sarah's attention. She was crying, but she smiled brightly. Life with Chris, Lucas, and Dylan quickly settled into a comfortable rhythm. A few years after our wedding, we were blessed with another addition to our family. Our daughter Lily was born on a warm spring morning. As I held her in my arms, Chris, Lucas, and Dylan gathered around the hospital bed. I felt complete. I quote, "never known before." I adore all 3 of my children, Lucas and Lily, my biological children, and Dylan, my stepson. Blood did not matter. They were all my children. Sarah was helping with the kids one evening when we were startled by a familiar voice on the television. They are larger than life. They were my parents. My father stood on a podium, waving to the cheering crowd. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "Robert Andrews announces candidacy for mayor." My heart almost stopped. I hadn't seen my parents in years, even if only on a screen. My father looked older, his hair grayer, but his eyes retained the same stern, determined expression I remembered so well. As we watched him speak about family values and moral integrity, Sarah's face twisted with rage. Hippocrates. She spit. Her voice was shaking with fury. I turned to her, surprised at Sarah. She took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving the screen. "There's something you should know, Mia. Something they had kept hidden for years." "What?" I asked, perplexed. What she said next shook me to the core. My parents had their first child, a boy, several years before Grace and I were born. But he was born with severe physical disabilities and no legs. Instead of loving and caring for him, they abandoned him in the hospital, afraid he would embarrass them. A storm of emotions swept over me. Shock, disbelief, and profound sadness for the brother I never knew. "Why haven't you told me sooner?" I inquired, my voice shaky as Sarah's eyes welled with tears. "I am sorry, Mia. I should have. But after what your parents had done to you, I didn't want to add to your suffering." That night, after the kids went to bed, I made a decision. I needed Chris's help to find my brother. We hired a private investigator. Weeks passed, and we finally had a lead. My brother survived and thrived, despite all odds. He was a successful writer, married, and had children of his own. He had been adopted by a wealthy family, who had given him every opportunity to succeed. Meeting him for the first time felt surreal. Even though he looked different, I recognized parts of myself in his face. His name was Ben, and he greeted me with a friendly smile and open arms. He said softly, "I've always known I had a biological family somewhere. I just never expected to find a sister." Over the next few months, Ben and I grew close. I introduced him to my family, and he invited us into his home. His wife, Emily, and their 2 children joined our extended family. It had been 22 years since my parents kicked me out. Life had progressed, bringing both joy and sorrow. Lucas, now 20, had just started college on a baseball scholarship. I could not have been more proud of the man he was becoming. One lazy Tuesday afternoon, I was scrolling through news articles when a familiar face caught my attention. It was my father, looking older, but with the same air of self-importance. The headline read, "Mayor Robert Andrews discusses family values in an exclusive interview." Curiosity got the better of me, and I watched the video for a few minutes. I listened as my father discussed the significance of family and moral values. The interviewer then asked about his children. My father's expression softened into what I recognized as his public sympathy. Look, I have one daughter named Grace. She is the light of our lives. Unfortunately, we lost 2 of our children. The pain doesn't go away, but it has made our family stronger. For days, I seethed with silent rage. How dare they erase me and Ben while pretending to be tragic, sympathetic figures? Ben called Mia, almost as if fate intervened. "Guess what? I'll be doing a book signing in our hometown next week. It would mean everything to me if you could come. I would not miss it for the world." I told him about a plan that had already formed in my mind. The following week, I was back in the city where I grew up. As I walked down the familiar streets, memories rushed back. Some are good, while others are painful. I pushed them aside. I remained focused on what I needed to do. The book signing was taking place in the grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel. As I entered, I realized Ben hadn't exaggerated. Half of the town seemed to be present. Local celebrities, business leaders, and politicians were mingling while waiting for the event to begin. And in the front row sat my parents and Grace, my father. The mayor now looked like a distinguished politician. My mother, elegantly dressed, smiled and nodded at people she recognized. Grace sat beside them. They had not noticed me yet. I found a seat near the back. My heart was beating so loudly that I thought everyone could hear it. Then he rolled onto the stage in his wheelchair, to thunderous applause. He appeared confident and at ease in the spotlight as he began discussing his book and his life. I noticed my parents nodding, trying to appear sympathetic. "I was born with a severe disability," Ben explained. "No legs and other health issues. My biological parents abandoned me in the hospital, unable or unwilling to care for me." I watched my father closely, but his expression remained unchanged. No recognition, no shame, just a politician's practiced look of concern for someone else's story. "It's a sad story," Ben added. "But I was lucky. I was adopted by a wonderful family who gave me every chance for success." Nonetheless, I was always curious about my birth family, who they were, and why they gave me up. The room was totally silent. Everyone focused on Ben as he spoke. My heart raced as I anticipated the moment when things would change. Everything was coming. But this isn't the end of my story. Then he smiled. "You see, I've found my family. My sister Mia is here today." He turned to me and extended his hand. "Mia, could you join me on stage?" As I stepped into the spotlight, the audience let out a collective gasp. Many faces appeared to recognize each other. After all, I'd grown up in this town. However, the most dramatic reactions occurred in the front row. My parents' faces turned pale. Their expressions alternated between shock, fear, and realization. Grace looked as if she had witnessed a ghost. They knew their carefully cultivated image was about to crumble. My parents stood quickly, clearly intending to flee, but I was not about to let them hide the truth again. "Mom and Dad, please stay," I called out, my voice echoing throughout the now quiet room. "Do you think it's time we had an honest conversation?" My parents froze, trapped in the gaze of the entire audience. They sat back down, slowly and reluctantly. I took a deep breath. "Many of you knew me growing up. You knew my family. However, you were unaware of many things. A lot has remained hidden for far too long. Then I told them everything. How my parents abandoned Ben in the hospital because they were ashamed of his physical differences, how they had concealed his existence while basing their reputation on lies. And then I continued, my voice becoming more powerful. History repeats itself. I was 19 years old when I became pregnant. They provided neither support nor understanding. They demanded that I have an abortion, despite doctors' warnings that it could render me infertile. When I refused, they kicked me out, leaving me pregnant, alone, and abandoned, all to maintain their perfect image. Gasps and whispers echoed throughout the crowd. I saw disgusted looks directed at my parents, who appeared to shrink in their seats. For years I've heard them discuss family values and morality. I replied, my voice filled with emotion. But their actions reveal a different story. They abandoned 2 of their children just as we needed them the most. They erased us from their lives in order to maintain their perfect image. The room erupted in chaos. Everyone was shouting. Some aimed at my parents, while others aimed at one another. Journalists who had come for a simple book signing were now taking copious notes or speaking into their phones. In the midst of the uproar, I locked eyes with my father, the man who once keyed in soap and was powerful in my childhood. Now look at heat small and defeat, 80. My mother was crying openly, and Gracie's face was saggy and frozen, filled with shock and confusion. In the days that followed, the simple tour of it exploded. It made headlines both locally and nationally. My father's political career dissolved overnight. The man who preached about deep-rooted integrity and family values was exposed as a Cayman. Let us suppose, Oscar, that they shine so brightly that they are impossible to hold and whitened alike. He resigned for personal reasons. If everyone knew the truth, the college where he had told Jimmy would have quickly kissed and fired him. Amid the scandal, something became clear. Grace made her decision. She stood up to our parents' lies, refusing to face the truth. During a brief phone call, she hissed, You've ruined everything you've ever known. Do not contact me again. You are dead to me, just as your award did for Mom and Dad. However, life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. A few days later, I received a call from a number that he couldn't recognize. And it was the first 8 a.m. in over 22 years. Grace's fiancé is gay. Solomon Mia is the father of my eldest child. He spoke, his voice hesitant and almost shy. I've been thinking about us, about AP, Grace, and myself. We Tian hated children, and I thought, hey, we have a phone together. Perhaps we could form a family, a lie. I see you can't help but leave your chai. Adam, you made your decision 22 years ago. You lied to me while I was pregnant with your child. You married my sister. And now you think you can return to me because you can't stop yourself from seeing a child with hair? No, this is not how it works. But am I saying no? I have a wonderful husband and a lovely family. I do not need you. I certainly do. You may. And to you. Goodbye. I hung up, feeling a sense of chiolos. Yes, you are. I had no idea what I needed, but the sewer prices didn't stop there. The following day, I received another unexpected call, this time from Adam's parents. Maya. A tentative voice inquired. This is Linda, Adam's mother. We just learned about Lucas. Is this true? Do we have a grandiose view of skill envy and irritation which, if fully realized, would be emotional and eye-opening? Adam and my parents told them I'd had an abortion and fled. They spent years believing their grandchild did not exist. Would we like to meet him? Linda spoke, her voice trembling. If that is okay with you, of course, we need your wrist handy. If you do it, you're not anti-US in your lives. I thought we could. He is not a fool for a moment. Adam's parents, we reclaim responsibility for Adam's actions or the lies my parents told me. They also despise B and DCE. Okay, I finally said a lie. I'll tell Kate to leave SAS and see if he's willing to meet you. Lucas's meeting with his grandparents went surprisingly well. There were tears, Hugh. Cheers. There will be a lot of catching up. Lucas, always kind-hearted. You'll sue Almighty then. T. Montes responded with open arms. Hugh V. became a normal name in life. Biden and his family became a regular part of our lives, filling our home with laughter and love for Sarah, and Uncle Mike adored all the grandchildren he shared. I am an elder, whether biologically or not. Regarding my parents and Grace, I only hired bits and pieces about them. They despise the sea and have relocated to avoid it. Part of me felt bad for them, but I knew I'd done the right thing by telling the truth. Life is filled with secrets. Lucas, Dylan, and our new Do You Tear Lily BTM. Everything I hoped for. Our home was full of love, and despite the challenges, we found joy in these small moments. Family dinners, rooting for the boys at baseball games. And the laughter of our children. One evening after the kids had gone to bed, I sat on our porch with Chris and watched the stars. Do you ever think of them? He asked gently. My parents. I nodded and stared into the night. It can be strange at times, after everything we've done. Part of me is still wondering if they regret it. But I believe I've finally come to terms with the fact that they may never see the results of any therapy gar avail. I have everything I could possibly want right here. Tea certainly is squeezed in my hand. And I knew he understood if he was there, so I forgave them all, Eli. It was more like I no longer needed their approval. I had built a life for myself, a family full of love and acceptance. That was more than enough. A few months after the scandal broke, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Am I gay? It's Grace emerged. The voice on the other end. I haven't heard from her since the FAA lawsuit. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Ben and Cure of Philadelphia. KDKXY. Chris, I spoke cautiously. What do you want? There was a long, pale use, and I could hear her breath trembling. I need to tell you a K about Adam. I felt a wave of emotions, but I remained silent. She speaks. He left me. She finally spoke, her voice cracking. After every hang, after I stood by him through the scandal, he said he couldn't take the pressure anymore. He left. A part of me wanted to gloat, reminding her that Adam had a habit of fleeing when things got tough. But I knew better. Grace was broken, just like I had been all those years before. I'm sorry, Grace, I said softly and meant it. But Adam has been making these types of decisions for years. I'm not sure if he will ever change. Grace began crying, and for the first time in years, I detected vulnerability in her voice. I should have listened to you here. I was so caught up in trying to meet Mom and Dad's expectations that I missed what was right in front of me. The conversation was bittersweet. Grace wasn't asking for forgiveness, but in that moment, I realized I had already forgiven her, if only because holding on to the anger wasn't serving me any longer. It was time to let go. Take care of yourself, Grace, I said as the call ended. I had no idea what would happen next for her, but I hoped she would find her own path, just as I had. Ben and I became close as siblings, and our families frequently spent holidays and weekends together. It was healing not only for me, but also for my children, to see that our family could be rebuilt, as children. The younger got along well with Lucas and Dylan, and Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike welcomed them like long-lost grandchildren. Ben smiled at me one afternoon while we were sitting at the dinner table. I never imagined I'd have a real family again. Mia. I spent many years feeling like an outsider, but thanks to you, I've found home. His words struck a chord within me. Family was more than just blood. It was about the relationships we chose to maintain and nurture. Regardless, we had created something beautiful together. Lucas, my oldest, was maturing into an outstanding young man. After meeting Adam's parents, he'd be curious about his biological father. One evening, after I had put the younger children to bed, he asked to speak. Mom, Lucas began. I understand you said you don't want Adam in our lives, but do you think I'll ever meet him? His question took me off guard. I'd spent years keeping Adam out of our lives, but looking at my son, I realized that this was his decision. I'm not sure Adam is ready for that, Lucas, I said gently. However, if you want to contact him, I will not stop you. Just promise me that you will be careful. Lucas nodded. I do not expect anything from him, Mom. I simply want to know who he is. A few weeks later, Lucas contacted Adam. The meeting began awkwardly, but Lucas handled it with maturity that surprised me. Adam appeared distant, unsure of how to bridge the gap between his choices and the son he had never known. But Lucas was strong, and he told me after the meeting, I'm glad we met, but he's not the father I need. That's Chris. I hugged him tightly, proud of the man he was becoming. Years passed, and I never reached out to my parents. Life has a funny way of making things come full circle. One day, I got the letter in the mail. It contained an old-fashioned, handwritten letter from my father. He didn't apologize directly, but he did express regret about how things had turned out. He wrote, "I am not the man I once thought I was. I now realize that the values I held so tightly caused more harm than good. I understand if you never want to see us again, but please know that I think about you often." I sat with the letter for quite some time, feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to throw it away to save myself from further pain. But another part of me understood the significance of his words. He would never be the perfect father, but this could be his way of trying. In the end, I decided not to respond. I'd forgiven him in my own way, but I didn't need to dwell on that chapter of my life. My parents made their decisions, and I made mine. My thoughts were on my family, Chris, Lucas, Dylan, Lily, and the future we were creating together. Life had come full circle in ways I had not expected. From the day I left home as a pregnant teenager to the moment I stood on stage with my brother. Exposing the truth to the world had made me stronger than I had ever imagined possible. Family meant more than just where you came from. It was about who supported you when it counted the most. I had found my family, including Chris, our children, Ben, Sarah, and Uncle Mike. They were the ones who lifted me up and accepted me without judgment. Looking back on my life, I realized something significant. I didn't need to seek resolution from those who had wronged me. I had already found it in the love and light I had created around myself. That was more than enough.